The most powerful objects ever lost to history. Imagine this. You're an archaeologist in 1945, walking through the rubble of a bombed-out German castle. Your flashlight catches something glinting in the dust. As you brush away decades of ash and debris, you realize you've just found something that once shaped the fate of nations. Then you hear footsteps, voices, and within minutes, it's gone. Vanished, and nobody knows where it went. Throughout history, some objects have held more power than weapons, more influence than armies, and more meaning than gold. But here's the thing. Some of them have simply disappeared, vanished into the void, leaving behind only mystery, speculation, and one hell of a historical headache. Today, we're diving deep into the most powerful objects ever lost to history. Objects that changed the course of human civilization and then just ghosted us. Some might reappear tomorrow. Some might be buried in a warehouse you could drive past right now. But regardless, their absence is absolutely fascinating. Let's go. The Ark of the Covenant. Let's start with the heavy hitter, and I mean that literally. The Ark of the Covenant isn't just some religious artifact. According to historical accounts, this thing was an ornate wooden chest, approximately 4 feet by 2.5 feet, covered in pure gold. Inside, 2 stone tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments, a jar of manna, and Aaron's staff. For roughly 400 years, it was the most sacred object in Jewish culture, housed in the Holy of Holies within Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem. Here's where it gets interesting. In 586 BCE, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II invaded Jerusalem. His armies systematically destroyed the temple, looted the treasury, and presumably took everything that wasn't nailed down, and probably some things that were. But here's the mystery. Ancient texts don't mention the ark being taken. It just vanishes from the historical record. Some scholars argue it was deliberately hidden by Jewish priests who saw the Babylonians coming. Others claim it was destroyed in the initial invasion. And then you've got the real interesting theories, like the one suggesting it was smuggled to Ethiopia, where the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims it still resides in the Church of St. Mary of Zion in Axum. According to their tradition, they've got the genuine article locked away, only viewed by one specially appointed guardian at a time. The Ark represents something profound, complete theological authority, not just symbolically, but literally. If you possessed this object, you possessed the Word of God, as far as ancient Jewish tradition was concerned. You could claim legitimacy, spiritual superiority, everything, which is precisely why its disappearance was catastrophic. Imagine if the Pope's official crown just vanished tomorrow, and historians still couldn't figure out what happened 2,600 years later. The crazy part? If the Ark truly still exists and was somehow discovered, it would fundamentally challenge everything we think we know about the Second Temple period and the accuracy of biblical historical accounts. This isn't just a lost object. It's a lost key to understanding an entire civilization. The Amber Room. Okay, so technically, the Amber Room wasn't exclusively Hitler's, but I'm including it here because it perfectly encapsulates how powerful objects become leveraged in the hands of dictators. This wasn't just valuable, this was psychologically powerful. The Amber Room was an 18th century chamber in the Russian Catherine Palace, decorated almost entirely with panels of amber, roughly 11 tons of it. We're talking panels, mirrors, and ornamental fixtures all crafted from fossilized tree resin. It was called the eighth wonder of the world by people who'd actually seen it. When you walked into this room, you didn't just see wealth, you experienced it, you felt it. When the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, they looted the Catherine Palace. And yes, they took the Amber Room. Every single panel. They carefully disassembled this masterpiece and transported it to Königsberg Castle in East Prussia, where they reassembled it as a trophy of their superiority. For Hitler's regime, it wasn't about the monetary value, it was about power. It was about saying, we are so dominant, we don't just conquer countries, we absorb their culture itself. Then 1945 happened. The Soviet army advanced, and German forces faced an impossible choice: evacuate or destroy. Historians have debated this for decades. Some claim the Amber Room was destroyed in the bombing of Königsberg. Others suggest it was loaded onto a German ship, the Wilhelm Gustloff, which sank in the Baltic Sea with over 1,000 passengers aboard. Others argue it was secreted away by individual soldiers or officers. Here's the kicker. In 1997, a replica was completed and installed back in Catherine Palace, funded by the German government as a gesture of reconciliation. So now, Russia has a perfect copy of its stolen treasure, but not the original. It's like someone photoshopped your family heirloom and said, "Here, this is basically the same thing." Technically true, emotionally, not even close. The Amber Room's disappearance represents something crucial: the weaponization of culture. When powerful objects fall into the hands of regimes that understand their psychological value, they become tools of domination. The loss of the Amber Room wasn't just about losing an artifact. It was about the violation of cultural identity itself. The Library of Alexandria. Let me set the scene. It's around 47 BCE, and you're walking through Alexandria, Egypt. The city is absolutely thrumming with intellectual energy. Scholars from across the known world have gathered here for one reason: the Library of Alexandria. This wasn't just any library. This was the repository of human knowledge. We're talking hundreds of thousands of scrolls. Some estimates go as high as 500,000, covering everything from philosophy to mathematics to medicine to engineering. The library represented something revolutionary for its time: the democratization of knowledge. Anyone wealthy or connected enough could access texts that, previously, were locked away in private collections or temple vaults. It was the ancient world's version of having the entire internet in one building. Except, without the internet. Then, civil war broke out during Caesar's conquest of Egypt. And here's where historians get genuinely upset. The library burned. How much of it? We don't actually know precisely. Some accounts suggest only a portion was destroyed. Others claim the entire collection went up in flames. What we do know is that an incalculable number of scrolls were lost. Works by ancient philosophers, scientific treatises, historical records, mathematical proofs. Gone. But here's the truly maddening part. We don't actually know what we lost. Think about that for a second. There are hundreds of references in surviving texts to works that don't exist anymore. Ancient authors cited books that only they had access to. We know these texts existed because other people mentioned them, but the actual texts themselves vanished. It's like if someone deleted Wikipedia and all we had left were footnotes referencing articles that no longer exist. Some scholars argue that the loss of the library set human knowledge back by centuries. Others contend that most of the library's collection had already been copied and distributed enough that the loss wasn't as catastrophic as it sounds. But the psychological impact, that was absolutely catastrophic. The destruction of the library represented the obliteration of the pursuit of knowledge itself, at least temporarily. What's fascinating is that historians still don't have a complete picture of what was in the library. We found fragments here and there. Papyri have been discovered in Egypt with texts that reference library holdings. But we'll never know the full scope of what humanity lost that day. This isn't just a lost object, it's a lost understanding of our own history. The Crystal Skull of Mitchell Hedges. All right, let's talk about something that straddles the line between genuine mystery and elaborate hoax. The Mitchell Hedges Crystal Skull. This is where history gets deliciously weird. In 1924, a British explorer and adventurer named F.A. Mitchell Hedges was exploring Mayan ruins in Belize when, according to his account, his teenage daughter Anna found a crystal skull buried beneath an altar. Now here's the thing, nobody else was present to verify this, but Mitchell Hedges claimed this skull was approximately 3,600 years old, carved from a single piece of clear quartz crystal, and allegedly used in Mayan rituals related to death and the afterlife. For decades, this skull was the artifact. Museums wanted it, collectors pursued it, conspiracy theorists claimed it possessed mystical powers. Indiana Jones literally based an entire movie on the premise of a powerful crystal skull. And for good reason. If genuine, it represents a level of technological sophistication that pre-Columbian civilizations supposedly didn't possess. Crystal work at that scale would require incredibly precise tools and understanding of crystallography. Then things got weird. Mitchell Hedges claimed the skull could heal illnesses and was allegedly used in ancient death rituals to predict death. People reported experiencing visions near it. One account describes a woman who gazed into the skull and saw the future. Others claim the skull glows with an inexplicable internal light. But here's the plot twist. When the skull was analyzed using modern scientific techniques in the 1970s and 1990s, researchers concluded it was almost certainly created in the 19th century, not in pre-Columbian times. Tool marks consistent with modern jeweler's equipment were found on the skull. The crystal composition didn't match anything found in Mesoamerica. It was likely a hoax or a misidentification. Yet, and this is crucial, the skull's location became contested. Different institutions claimed ownership. Museums fought legal battles over it. For years, nobody could definitively prove where it came from or who legitimately possessed it. It became lost not in space, but in bureaucratic limbo, with multiple parties claiming authenticity and ownership. The Mitchell-Hedges skull represents the power of mystery itself. Whether genuine or not, the artifact held immense cultural power because nobody knew for certain. That uncertainty, that gap between truth and legend, gave it more influence than it probably deserved. The Holy Grail. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. The Holy Grail might be the most ridiculous entry on this list, and I'm fully aware of it. But stick with me, because the concept of a lost Holy Grail has shaped history, inspired thousands of expeditions, launched military campaigns, and influenced culture for nearly 2,000 years. For those unfamiliar, the Holy Grail is supposedly the cup used by Jesus at the Last Supper. According to Christian tradition, it was used to catch his blood during the crucifixion. For centuries, various Christian institutions claimed possession of it. The Cathars claimed they protected it. Medieval knights searched for it. Crusades were partially motivated by its pursuit. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. Multiple organizations claim to possess different versions of the Holy Grail. The Cathedral of Valencia in Spain houses what they claim is the Holy Grail, a goblet made from agate stone with gold and jeweled mounting. It's been there since the 15th century, and their claim is surprisingly well documented. Then you've got the Holy Chalice at the Basilica of San Isidoro in León, Spain, which also has strong historical documentation supporting its authenticity. And then there's the Nantios cup in Wales, a simple wooden cup that some Arthurian legends connect to the Grail narrative. But here's the thing, the historical documentation for any of these is sketchy at best. We have no credible evidence that any artifact actually is the cup from the Last Supper. What we do have is centuries of competing claims, elaborate mythologies, historical disputes, and the psychological power of a legend so profound it's transcended religion into pure cultural mythology. The Holy Grail is lost not because we can't find it, but because we can't agree on what we're looking for. Is it the literal cup? A metaphorical concept? A symbol of spiritual purity? Different cultures and religions have different answers. And that ambiguity, that disagreement, is what makes it truly powerful. The legend of the Holy Grail has inspired more expeditions, more fiction, more academic debate, and more human effort than most objects that actually exist. Indiana Jones looked for it. Monty Python mocked the search for it. Medieval scholars devoted their lives to studying historical accounts of it. The power of a lost object isn't always about what it is, it's about what people believe it could be. The Scrolls of Qi Shan. This is one that most people haven't heard of, which makes it all the more fascinating. In the 1970s, archaeologists in China discovered evidence of ancient scrolls at Qi Shan, an archaeological site in China's Shanxi province. These weren't just any scrolls. These were allegedly records from the Shang dynasty, approximately 1600 to 1046 BCE, predating the better-known oracle bones and representing the earliest forms of Chinese writing. Initial reports suggested these scrolls contained information about early Chinese governance, astronomical observations, and military strategies. If genuine, they would have rewritten our understanding of early Chinese civilization. Except, and here's the kicker, the scrolls were never properly cataloged or preserved. They were lost to poor archival practices, institutional chaos, and possibly deliberate obscuration. What makes this particularly frustrating is that we know they existed. Photographs were taken. Preliminary analyses were conducted. But then, nothing. The scrolls simply disappeared into the chaos of mid-20th century China during a period of immense political and social upheaval. To this day, Scholars debate whether these scrolls still exist somewhere, hidden in a Chinese archive, or whether they were destroyed. Some claim they're preserved in a private collection. Others insist they were lost to the Cultural Revolution's destruction of historical artifacts. But nobody knows for certain. The Qi Shan scrolls represent a frustrating category of lost objects. Those that were documented well enough that we know they existed and approximately what they contained, but not well enough that we can locate or verify them. It's like having someone's phone number, but no way to call them. You know they're out there somewhere, but you're stuck. The Library of Baghdad. Let's fast forward to medieval Islamic civilization, which was genuinely the center of intellectual advancement in the world at that time. Baghdad, under the Abbasid Caliphate, was home to the House of Wisdom, one of the greatest intellectual centers ever established. Scholars translated texts into Arabic, conducted original research, and preserved works that would otherwise have been lost. But here's the historical tragedy. In 1258 CE, Mongol forces under Hulagu Khan invaded Baghdad. The subsequent destruction was catastrophic. The city burned, buildings were destroyed, and according to contemporary accounts, the House of Wisdom's library, containing thousands of manuscripts on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and engineering, was systematically looted or burned. Historical accounts vary wildly on what actually happened. Some sources claim that Mongol soldiers, unfamiliar with the value of written texts, used manuscripts as kindling. Others suggest that much of the collection was deliberately preserved by sympathetic officers. But what we do know is that an incalculable amount of scientific and mathematical knowledge was lost in the chaos. The loss was so severe that it arguably set back human scientific advancement by centuries. Islamic scholars had developed advanced mathematics, made astronomical observations that wouldn't be matched in Europe for hundreds of years, and pioneered medical procedures that seemed like science fiction at the time. Much of this knowledge disappeared when Baghdad fell. What's particularly infuriating is that we only know what we lost through fragmentary accounts. References in surviving texts hint at theories and discoveries that vanished completely. A mathematical proof here, an astronomical table there, evidence that sophisticated knowledge existed, but no actual documentation of what that knowledge was. The Voynich manuscript. Here's a slightly different category. Objects that are found, but whose original context is completely lost. The Voynich manuscript is a 15th century document written in an undeciphered script, filled with bizarre illustrations of plants, astronomical charts, and anatomical diagrams that make zero sense. It's genuinely one of the most mysterious documents ever discovered. But here's the thing. The Voynich manuscript didn't appear out of nowhere. Scholars are reasonably certain it's a copy of an earlier document. The handwriting, the parchment composition, and the style of the illustrations suggest it was transcribed from something older. But that original source, completely lost. We have this mysterious copy, but not the original it came from. More broadly, the Voynich manuscript represents the context we've lost. Even if someone deciphered the text tomorrow, we'd only have partial understanding of what it was originally intended to communicate. Who wrote the original? What was its purpose? What knowledge did the original author have access to that we don't? All of that is gone. The real power of the Voynich manuscript, I'd argue, is that it demonstrates how quickly information can be obscured. Within a few generations, a document's original purpose becomes shrouded in mystery. We could be living in a world where ancient knowledge is sitting in a museum, completely unrecognizable to us because we've lost the context. All right, so here's what we've learned. Some of the most powerful objects in history are powerful precisely because they're lost. Their absence creates mystery. Their uncertainty generates mythology. Their loss forces us to confront the fragility of human knowledge and civilization. Whether we're talking about religious relics that have shaped billions of lives, artworks that represented the height of human achievement, or scientific knowledge that might have accelerated our advancement by centuries, these objects mattered because they held meaning. And their disappearance mattered just as much, if not more. The wild part? Some of these objects might still exist. The Ark of the Covenant could be sitting in a vault somewhere. Parts of the Holy Grail might be gathering dust in a private collection. Scientific texts from Baghdad's House of Wisdom might be preserved in archives nobody's thought to check. What does that tell us? It tells us that history isn't just what we know, it's what we've forgotten, what we've lost, and what we might stumble upon tomorrow in some dusty warehouse or cave system. Thanks so much for watching. And hey, keep your eyes open. Maybe you're the person who finds one of these someday. Wouldn't that be something?